Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for joining our session today. My name is Melanie Williams. I'm here presenting today with my colleague Guillaume Michaud. We both work for Kairos, a system integrator with the slogan of Make Data Matter. And the data we're talking about today is data related to ESG. So ESG stands for environmental, social, and governance. And we're going to talk to you about how companies are in the future going to have to report data related to their performance in terms of how they affect the environment and how they affect our society. To start off with, if we think about companies and we make a word association, the kind of words that probably come into your head are things like money, profit, work, jobs. All of these, of course, are associated with companies. And if you look since probably Roman times, companies exist, and they exist for a purpose. That purpose can be anything. It can be providing clothing for us to wear. It can be putting foods on the shelves in our supermarkets. It can be creating a payment system to make the economy run. But generally, companies will have a purpose. And all of those companies together have something in common, which is generally they're all there to make profits. So since the beginning, it's been the fact that people invest in starting up a company, and they're rewarded for their investment and their risk-taking by the value that they get out of the company, so the creation of the wealth for the shareholders. This has been going on for a very long time, and the incessant, let's say, focus on short-term profit has brought with it some problems in our society today. So what we see are that we're faced now with inequity being the first one, which means that not all the people have the same opportunities to benefit from the value that these companies bring and to get the gains from these companies. And the second problem we have, which is quite clear on the graph here, is that since the Industrial Revolution, of course, we create a lot of CO2 emissions, which are having a very detrimental effect on our planet. I'm sure you've all heard of the activists and Greta Thunberg and all of those things, but that's for a very real reason. So what has happened is the United Nations have called a bit of a halt to all of this profit making, and they're saying, okay, we're going to make the companies responsible also for the impact they have on the environment. So they've come up with 17 sustainability goals. And of course, we're not expecting Odoo to fix the problem of world hunger or poverty, but we are expecting that Odoo might be able to help us in reporting around some of these issues. So these 17 goals have been turned into regulations by the authorities. And as of 2025, companies, of course, first the larger companies, the middle market companies, the public companies, are going to have to start reporting their sustainability figures. So not just the financial figures anymore. Of course, every company has to file their accounts and say how much money they make and how they do in their accounts, how healthy their company is financially. But the goal is to now also say how a company is doing in relation to sustainability goals. In Europe, we're doing pretty well with this. We're sort of leading the world in sustainability. There are other major economies, as you can see, not doing so well. But what is happening is we now have the EU taxonomy in place, which is putting in place the sort of assessment criteria that companies can use to figure out what they need to report. We have the SFDR, very important as well, which is looking at all of the investment funds out there, looking at how the banks are giving money to the companies. So we need to bear in mind that in the future, if you want to get capital invested in your company, you're going to have to prove your credentials as being an ESG compliant company. And then finally, the one that all the companies are worrying about today is the CSRD. And this is providing the framework for the reporting. So back maybe a decade or so ago, We had IFRS for the financial reporting, and globally now all the companies follow a similar standard to make their accounting. The same thing is happening with CSRD in the very near future, so starting as of next year. And of course the intention is that this sustainability reporting reaches as many companies as possible regardless of their size in the end, but it will start of course with the larger companies. So what do you as a company need to do? First of all, you have to look at the framework, figure out what are the regulations that are going to apply to the company. It can be a little bit different depending on the industry you're working in. Then you have to make a double materiality assessment. So you have to figure out what is the impact that my products and my company has on the environment and on society. And then you have to also look at what are the financial risks and opportunities out there for your company in relation to the sustainability goals. And finally, you have to figure out an infrastructure on how you're going to report on all this data. So some of it is relatively simple. For example, you might have to report the number of people in your workforce and how there's a gender split and a diversity split within your workforce, all quite doable. But you also have things like CO2 emissions, rather complicated to figure out how to record how much CO2 emissions my company is making. And not only your company, but if, for example, you're a car manufacturer, you have to also report the impact that your products are having on society. So for every car you sell, you also have to report what are the CO2 emissions going forward that are going into the environment. So this can be quite far-reaching. So what Guillaume is going to show you now is a pragmatic way to start collecting some of this information and data within your day-to-day operations, of course within your Odoo system. So you're already making lots of postings in your Odoo systems as your business runs, and some of that data can be collected and used for reporting of ESG.
Thank you very much, Benali. First of all, I'll check the time. I see we have limited time left, so what I can already suggest is to have a look at the webinar we did about a week ago, in case you really want to deep dive into what we've built. But now we'll quickly show you what we've been working on. So of course, you all know Odoo. And on top of this, whatever we built is actually this ESG Data App, as we call it. It's working a bit as a data app that's going this way, where we realize that in each different apps that you have within Odoo, each different department, there is ESG-related field. And the app that we built is actually pooling all those data, doing some calculation if it's needed, doing some transformation if it's needed, and then pooling those data within the app itself. Of course, you have a lot of different flow that can be done. And what we realize as well is, of course, the reporting option of Odoo is really nice. But since we are working as well with a lot of external reporting tools, we also have implemented additional dashboarding solution in reporting tools such as Tableau, Power BI, or Click. So today I will focus on one specific flow, which is the operational ESG data flow. What does that mean is that I will deep dive within one specific app, and I will show you how we can easily pull some specific ESG related data and how we can then report it on a higher level. Once again, this is an example. ESG can be done in many different ways, and it's important to come back on the structure that Melanie presented, which is infrastructure, data, and reporting, because you need to follow those three in order to make sure that you have an entire ESG related flow. So the example I will show you is the one that you see at the bottom. We will first go within the manufacturing app and capture data. So we will have a look at the voltage and current of a specific machine, transform and calculate a specific power demand and CO2 emission per machine, transform this then into a specific manufacturing order, which is then dependent on the machine that you are using, exporting this data, aggregating it, and then analyzing within then the ESG data app. So I will now go back and then open my Odoo. So as you know, Odoo was made for the app, and as you can see here, we have our ESG data app. Oh, excusez-moi. Alors, est-ce qu'on verra mon écran au bout d'un moment? Oui, voilà. Donc je reviens sur mon flow principal et on voit ici, du coup, on a comme notre ESG Data App, ici à droite. Donc ici, comme j'ai dit, on va se focuser sur un seul flow d'abord, le Operational Data. On peut voir que dans le Operational Data, on va pull des données de deux applications différentes. D'abord les données de production, les données de maintenance et ensuite les données plutôt... I'm so sorry. Yeah, I just realized I just switched to English. I'm so sorry. And so we'll have a look then at the production, maintenance, and energy data. So if I go now within my manufacturing app, I will have a look at the different machine that we have. So here we can see that we have 4 different machines. And if we look at the configuration of each machine, we have then more like financial or operational related data, which is then cost per hour, capacity, time efficiency, etc. But we also added a few fields related to energy. So this is really something related to the app that we've been working on. For example, that specific machine has a specific voltage, etc., etc. We can give it an estimated cost per kilowatt-hour and an estimated CO2 per kilometer as well. From there, we will then have a look at a specific manufacturing order, because each manufacturing order is dependent on those energy data to then be able to report it on a higher level. So if I take my manufacturing order, let's say that I want to build a specific table. That specific table gives us a BOM, which you can see here divided at the bottom, and then we can see that we have a new tab, which is then the energy tab. In that flow, we can see that we have the information that's been translated from the machine on the configuration that we gave earlier, and that based on the data that we provide, at the end we want to build 2 tables, you will have all the data that automatically be updated. If I want to have a look at the work orders, if at the end my expected time would be 2 hours rather than 1, automatically you will have the information that will be updated. But this is only the first part. What's important is then within our ESG Data App, it will then pull the information. So either you can decide by yourself if you want to do it on a daily, weekly, and an automatic data pooling, or if you always want to have the last information, you can always refresh data, and you will have the last refresh data. So now I will access to my energy data. And what can we see? We can see that for each machine and one specific day, we've been pulling energy usage, energy cost, operational hours, and many different ESG-related data for each day, for each machine, since 2022. Why is it useful? Of course, you first have to focus on the data that needs to be pulled to make sure that all the ESG-related topic will be taken into account. If I, for example, have a look at the strong filtering option that Odoo is suggesting, we can, for example, focus on the high power and demand, or have a look specifically within a specific date. So if I want to have a look on a specific quarter, all those information are, of course, automatically being reported. There is a few dashboard that has been built. So if I look here, for example, I have for each quarter the one that has a high power demand, but I can also have a look at it on a machine point of view. I can see, for example, that my machine number 3 has been consuming and having much more emission in terms of CO2 compared to before, and that it is operationally not the most optimized, for example. Out of those information, then you have production data, we have maintenance data that can be pulled from the different app, and then you can then export it into operational data export. So automatically the data will be aggregated based on the information that we need. Why is it important? You don't want to pull 6 different, 10 different files. You want to make sure that everything is being gathered within the same information. And that's why we created this external file. Following this, then we have added a lot of different settings to our app, where, of course, for such data app-related app, you must have a really good data integrity and maintenance and many different options. So in here, you can add some validation rules. You can have a more like a technical point of view where you can focus on a specific employee data management, focus on the data source, etc. So a lot of additional setting, of course, to make sure that your data is being monitored in the correct way. I will quickly jump into one of the Power BI dashboard that we've been working on for specifically the operational data. Because of course Odoo is really good in terms of dashboarding, but some other tools can add even more value to the reporting tools. So as you can see here, we have some information related to the cost, to the analysis trends. You can of course, like Odoo, do some filtering as well, look at a specific machine, look at a longer term. You can also focus directly within the CO2 emission, for example. And so this is really like a combination between the ERP and then the reporting tools, which is highly important to take into account. I'm looking now for the time. I'm not sure how much time I have left. Okay, still 5 minutes, amazing. So now we had a look at the operational point of view. Now if we have a look at the human resource point of view. So take into account, for example, the time of app. Because of course, ESG is not only CO2 related, it can be also more related to the social point of view. So the time of app, you all know what's happening there. A specific employee is either sick or wants to take some time off, and he is allowed to take a specific time of request. From the user's point of view, you will send a specific sick time request, and then now I'm not the employee anymore, I've switched from the manager point of view. As soon as the manager will receive that specific sick time off, let's say that, for example, he knows that there is a specific reason why that specific employee is sick. So we have added a new field here, which is then the incident type, where we can then add an additional ESG-related field to that specific information. So for example, we know that it's related to mental health issue. So by just adding these few fields left and right to your day-to-day operation, you can slowly increase the ESG data within Odoo directly. Once again, as Melanie explained, a lot of companies must report those on the long term, and bigger company needs to do this as of 2025. But of course, it doesn't mean that smaller company won't have to do it as well in the future. So don't really wait for those specific ESG regulation to come to you. Be prepared and have those already ready within your ESG data app. If I show again my human resource data app, in this case, it's connected to 3 different apps. We have the employee satisfaction, where we are pulling information from the e-learning app. Training is also from the e-learning app, and then the health incidence is then connected to our time of app. So as you can see, we can pull different type of data actually together within one specific file. In that case, we know that the employee 09 had a mental issue in 2015, severity level, etc. And then we can also transform the number of days directly here. So the important thing, of course, is that you can have a look at the dashboarding solution. So here we have some graph. We can see, for example, that the salespeople are apparently more likely to have health issue at the end of 2024 or 2023. So maybe our company has been focusing a bit too much on sales. But of course, if the dashboarding solution is not really what you're looking for, we have also worked on the HR Power BI viewpoint, where again, we will pull all those information from Odoo directly into Power BI. And on the same level, you can, for example, have a look at the number of training hours for a specific location. If you want to look at a specific department again, you want to focus on sales, you can directly focus on sales on that part. Look at, for example, a department point of view. You might have a look, for example, if you have more female or male. Based on this, you can connect the specific female, see a satisfaction score by age brackets. So it's a lot of additional ESG-related information that, of course, needs first to be stored, and then being able to be displayed on a different reporting solution. So if I go back to my final slide, as I explained earlier, there is a lot of different flow, voilà. A lot of different flows that can be translated within Odoo. There is not a real specific focus that we would advise. It's really dependent on the industry of the company, on the regulation that that company must be focusing on. It's not as easy as people think. It's a lot of work that has to be put in advance. And here at Curious, we really have the chance that we work with a lot of different software. We have worked with a lot of different ESG consultant, and we have the knowledge and the skills to help you all along the way, from the framework to the data to the final part, which is then the reporting point of view. If you have any question, don't hesitate to have a look at the QR code right here. And of course, it's a bit what I said before. The regulations are coming. The way you're doing business is, of course, changing. Start thinking and don't wait. Thank you very much to all of you. Alors, I understood that we have to do the question ourselves. So I see the first question. Great presentation, thank you very much, it's really nice. How easy, difficult is it to configure the flow that you just show up in terms of time, skills, and complexity? In that case, we have developed the flow in a specific way where We took into account like different industry. We wanted to show more from the operational point of view because the industry like retail and stuff like this, they will have to report on that specific level, but more from as well like a consulting point of view and service company, where in that case you will have to focus on different flow, as I say. In terms of time, skills and complexity, yeah, you really have to take into account that it's a long way. You don't start from a book, like even the regulation itself, they don't know exactly what will be regulated, but it's important to first gather all the important data and then to make sure that we can focus on the correct one. How to report on general data like electricity usage, etc. within Odoo. Electricity usage, of course, it's a bit difficult because it depends, of course, of what type of integration you can do with field of service or like all the connected machine, etc. that you might have. The solution that we suggested is really taking into account like a manual input, which might be a bit annoying, but as soon as you look at it from a higher level, it will then being able to be disaggregated for each different manufacturing order. So you need to aim big in a way, focus on some specific information, and from there you can then deep dive into each manufacturing order. So of course it's a bit different based on the flow that you will be looking at, but there is always a solution. You know, do as much as I do, and there will be always a possibility to make sure that we can pull this data within Odoo itself. It's possible to measure scope 1 emission, but is it possible to also integrate scope 2 and 3? Once again, if everyone is using the ESG Data App, it would be much easier for everyone to report on the scope 2 and scope 3. But yeah, as I said, it's a bit technical. You must be sure that you have information coming from your supplier, coming from your customer, and of course this will be made in the future, and it's the goal of the European Commission and the United Nations. But yeah, I mean, we have to take into account that you have to start reporting on those as soon as possible and not to wait for people to tell you what to do. How to separate on scope 1, 2, 3 emission. Alors, this is a bit more generic question. Once again, it's difficult to look at one scope, even more difficult to focus on the second one, and even more impossible to focus on the third one. But don't hesitate to come to our booth a bit later on to ask us more questions related to ESG. We're more than happy to help you on this. And yeah, more and more information are slowly showing up online. So if you want to have more information, don't hesitate to Google. There is a lot of nice paper as well, academic paper, which has been done on the subject. So yeah, don't hesitate to have a look online. I think that's it. I don't have any more questions I see on my screen. Thank you, Melanie, on the first part of the presentation. Thank you all for joining. If you have any question, we are not far. It's just next to there in front of the bar. And yeah, thank you very much, all.